This is a disclaimer. Basically, a lot of these episodes begin with a disclaimer, but this will probably be the longest disclaimer we've had in a series thus far. The first thing I'm going to talk about before I even talk about SAMHSA and all those other things is that tonight's episode is going to feel a lot different than the other ones. There will probably be tears. There'll probably be a lot of just real honest sort of realization. And that's because a lot of the story that we're going to talk about tonight and that of my father also resonates in the story we have talked about since the premiere back in October. So, it's a reminder that this will address various topics related to mental health and a lot of these things. These may be sensitive to some of our viewers. As always, viewer discretion is advised. We remind you to please consult your doctor, your mental health professional, your outreach group, your sponsor, or specialist before adopting any change to your dietary, physical, and or mental health regime. If you're looking for options with respect to mental health, contact SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, at 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. The service is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and is a confidential free information service for individuals and family members facing such stressors. Importantly, if you're facing suicidal crisis or emotional distress and need to be put in touch with a crisis center, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. Or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. You can also text the word HOME to 741-741. Those resources are also available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Let's also talk about something that we've talked about before in the show as well. In that, if you are looking for options to go down with respect to compulsive gambling, you realize you have a problem with compulsive gambling, and you realize now is the time I need to do something about this. Contact either the National Problem Gambling Hotline at 1-800-522-4700. Again, 1-800-522-4700. You can go to the National Council on Problem Gambling's website at ncpgambling.org. You can also call 1-800-GAMBLER. That's again 1-800-GAMBLER. Bet with your head, not over it. Finally, let's talk about something that has become very, very important and has basically been a very paramount part of my life in the last 5 months. The National MS Society is a collective of passionate individuals who want to do something about MS now, to move together towards a world free of multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is comprised of unpredictable and often disabling flare-ups of the central nervous system. Such flare-ups disrupt the flow of information within the brain and between the brain and the body. The National MS Society is the largest private funder of MS researchers in the world, investing more than $1 billion to date. MS stops people from moving, but the National MS Society exists to make sure that MS doesn't. To contact the National MS Society, please call 1-800-344-4867. Again, 1-800-344-4867. Or go to their website at nationalmssociety.org. Also of note, we are still raising money for the National MS Society through A Venture to a Cure's fundraising page at rebrand.ly/A Venture to a Cure. Again, rebrand.ly/A Venture to a Cure. This effort will last through September 30th. Thank you for those who have donated money to this amazing organization. In light of what has gone on in the last 5 months, to see that sort of outpouring of love and support means a lot to me. It touches me in so many ways, and I appreciate all of you. And on that, let's begin. Not Enough Time by Kelly Roper. The time we had, Dad, wasn't nearly enough to pack in an entire lifetime of love. There are so many questions that I need answers to. But now that you're gone, There's no way to ask you. But there are still photos to remember you by. Each time I look at them, I still want to cry. They say grief is easier to bear as time goes by. But that doesn't stop me from wondering why. Why my dad, my sweet dad, was taken so soon. When he was my guiding star, my sun, and my moon. There are no questions to answer a question like this. So I'll cherish your memory, and more New Year's we'll miss. This is The Venture Forward. Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be. Welcome to The Venture Forward. I'm John Venturini, a recovering addict of alcoholism, obesity, and compulsive gambling. And it's an honor and pleasure to see all of you this evening on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. This is a tough episode. This got born out of the idea that, tomorrow would have been my dad's 71st birthday. And I wanted to talk about the correlation between my dad's life and mine. Given that this season's going to end soon, and I don't think this message can wait till July, the day that he actually passed away 18 years ago. So we're going to talk about that tonight, in the sense that I think in the light of what has gone by in the last 5 months, I really look back to those memories. I really look back to those conversations back in 2002 and prior to that, and just really trying to reconstruct the things that we shared together as father and son, but also the things that he did, and more the reason why I have to resonate away from those things. And I'll explain that in a minute or two, but I want to say hello to all of you that have joined me in that of Matt. Hello, how are you? Hope you're doing well on this lovely Tuesday evening. It's starting to warm up. It's really nice outside. Sue, good to see you. I saw you're on both YouTube and Facebook, so Sue, it's good to see you. And Marilyn, Thank you. Thank you very much. This is never a good time of year for me. I think about my dad's birthday in May. I think about the time he passed away in July. And I think about also, this is right around the time my uncle passed away too. So I think about this time of year, and it's always an eye-opening time to remember the things that we remember, we hold dear, but also the life lessons we learn. Rather, these are between those things that were said, but also those things that were done, and also seeing what that has amounted to. My dad's a very, very interesting gentleman. I use the present tense because I don't think he ever leaves. I don't think when you pass on, you never leave. Your spirit is always around. We're always looking over each other. I know that during this third round against the weight loss and the bout with MS and almost being 2 years sober at the end of the month and having a leg up on that fight against compulsive gambling, that my dad is looking down and is wanting the best for me. I could see that through his story. So let's go back. Let's talk about that for a second. In the sense that, my dad has always been the sort of guy who was a very vivacious sort of guy. He's a large lover of life. He always had his sense of humor. I will never be able to match. I'm telling you that right now. Just not at all. But if you go back to his high school yearbook, you can even tell that my dad was the sort of guy that was just down to earth. Very down to earth, but he always had that sort of whimsical personality, that sort of sense of humor, whether it is a very elegant and intelligent joke or a very dirty one at best too. And I hope, in the sense of my sense of humor, that I've done that somewhat of a service. But I also think the sense is that my dad was the sort of person that didn't have the strongest frame either. My dad, in the course of his life, had a very tough battle with the scale, very tough battle as far as obesity. He was never profoundly obese like I was back, and we go back to January of 19 and remember me at 480. I mean, he was never that bad. But he did have problems with respect to diabetes. He did have problems with respect to hepatitis. So he had those sort of health issues for a good portion of his life. It's a reminder that I need to be very careful with my health, because we can't dismiss the lineage of health. We can't dismiss how that sort of, whether it's genetics or just bad habits or what have you, how that continues through the bloodline. So I must remain resemblant and resonant to that. Now, my dad was never diagnosed with MS, but I got the sense the older he got, the more he started to have brain fog, which was it ever diagnosed as MS or demyelination? No, it wasn't. But I know that there are echoes of what that could potentially have been if he was diagnosed with that. Now, were they quick to diagnose MS as, to the day he died in 2003? No. I mean, I think Now we're quicker to diagnose MS and demyelination a lot better now more than ever. We have machines that can find demyelination. We have machines that can show the withering away of the myelin sheath around nerves. So science has gotten a lot better in 2021 than in 2003 or any time before that. So who knows? But that was something that was omnipresent there. It was there for sure. My dad's diabetes, fortunately, I never had a large glucose return. My glucose always has been well within range, right around 100. Maybe a little under that. My dad at one time had a medical emergency where he had to go to the hospital. He hit his head and he had cellulitis form around that wound, and he ended up testing with a glucose level of 700 plus. And the doctors were talking to him saying, hey, do you have your insulin? Do you have your insulin? Certainly you must have your insulin. And my dad didn't even realize he was diabetic. And that was the day that changed his rig around life as far as, well, now I have to start taking insulin. I have to start testing my blood every day, multiple times a day at times, because he's diabetic. So that was an eye-opening thing. My dad's heart wasn't the strongest. He had multiple heart attacks in his life. In fact, on July 2nd of 2003, he had his last heart attack, the one that killed him. So I know that there's very questionable sort of health habits on my dad's side. I know that there's questionable health habits across the entire family. So more the reason why I really need to be on top of things and making sure that I'm doing the right things for me. And certainly never getting past, I would say even 250, 260. I can't let my body ever get to that stage ever again. The fact that I've gained and lost 200 plus pounds 3 times and I'm alive, knock on wood, I'm very thankful and I'm very blessed because I know what the alternative is. Definitely do. My dad's health wasn't the greatest. Now, that said, he did smoke a lot. And when towards the end of his life, I would say the last year or so of his life, he was still smoking a lot of cigarettes, like 2.5 packs a day. When my dad passed, and when my mom and I, and my cousin Ian, who I love you, Ian, and Uncle John, I love you too, and my ex, we were all cleaning out that apartment. My buddy Josh, and we found that the walls were yellow. The walls were flat out yellow, in the sense that he was smoking that much, and his life wasn't in a good place. And you can also make the argument that he probably gave up. He went through some changes in his life, and we won't go digging into that. But he wasn't happy. He wasn't happy at all. And it was evident by the walls that were in his apartment in Whitestone. Another thing that I have to be on top of, in the sense that depression and anxiety run very deep across the board, both sides of the house. So I have to remain cognizant of that. But it's more the reason why I do this show, why I feel like I definitely need to talk about this and continue talking about this. Because if we go through what we went through last year in this incredible sort of new normal. Well, I said it without even saying the word that would get me demonetized. Look at that. We all lost our way. We're all looking for new ways to get that sort of connection, especially when we're not meeting people face to face or going to meetings, whether they're AA or OA or GA or NA or what have you, or CODA. Went to a couple of those virtually too. So this project is important because I've connected with so many people. Because I need to remind myself of how important and how intrinsic all of this is. I can't lose sight of that. Not at all. I'm going to talk about something else in a second as far as my dad. But, Gilly, good to see you tonight. He says 200 pounds gained and lost 3 times. Damn, Jay. Man, that's a book right there. It is. It certainly is. And if it wasn't for the MS, I'd be very close to done with it. But now I feel like that needs to be talked about as well. But, Gilly, you're spot on. He continues to say, write that out. And I agree. It's been written out. Actually, it's been typed out. But yeah, for sure. Christina, good evening. Hope you're doing well. We definitely are connected, for sure. So, when we were talking about the sort of things that kind of held us back, we talk about the disclaimers I mentioned in the beginning of this episode that I have talked about for an entire season, 2 entire seasons, the entire year. We talk about alcoholism. We talk about mental health, but we also talk about gambling. And my dad was very much a compulsive gambler. Now, I think tied back to what I was talking about is I think he was at a point where his life forced him to the casino more because he was unhappy. And we talk about gambling as a mechanism for that dopamine drop or dopamine drip. And it's because people who go out and gamble usually have barriers that are blocked in back of us, saying, okay, we need that sort of dopamine drip and we don't want to address why we're doing that sort of thing. I know that certainly was the case with me. I know that certainly was the case with my dad. We could talk about how the certain casinos and whatnot were tempting us to go with free rooms and dining money and this, that, and the other thing. But at the end of the day, it was for that dopamine trip. Or as I affectionately called it back on my episodes with that, the clang-clangs, the ding-dings, and the whoop-whoops. That's what that is. My dad, this should come as no shocker to many of you, was big on the video poker. And, certainly until the last day I gambled in April of last year, that became my game because I was so withered away anyway. I wasn't gambling and playing poker at the table anymore. I just didn't have the sort of attention span, and God only knows how bad the demyelination was becoming over the years. But definitely it was something that he really gravitated to and was always doing. And truth be told, a couple of 3 or 4 trips, I would say, over the last year or 2 of his life involved us going to down Atlantic City or going to Foxwoods up in Connecticut. Because that's how we connected. But we also had really great conversations too. And not to say that we were just talking. No, we were talking about this, that, and the other thing. Sharing dirty jokes. I mean, that's what we did, right? But the life lesson therein is why? Why are we gambling? Why are we doing that? Why do I feel the need to eat all the things? Why do I feel the need to drink? My dad, for the longest time before he became residently clear that he couldn't drink anymore because of the diabetes, was drinking. At some point, he was drinking 3 to 4 times a week at night, going to the bar and whatnot. So yeah, that that definitely follows. That definitely follows in lineage as well. I was telling someone earlier that the lessons that we learn are not necessarily the lessons that are told, but they are the lessons that are demonstrated. And they may not be the lessons that are demonstrated on purpose. They might be the nature of things that the person who's teaching you, the pedagogue, if you will, doesn't even realize that it's a problem, or moreover, refuses to address that because they may be in too deep. They may be very deep in that. And in the case of my dad, I really got the sense that was the case. It's something where with addiction, and just popped up. Christina, you got it spot on. Addictions are like pouring gasoline on your anxiety. But I will also say that addictions is like pouring gasoline on your depression as well, especially when the addiction itself has that sort of dopamine response to offset and sway off the pain of what depression brings. Depression talks about the past. Anxiety talks about the future. And what do we have? We have right now. And if we can control our right now, then we stand a chance to not have anxiety and also be free of those road bumps in the back of that depression might be formed from. Now, that's not to say that all depression's that. Depression could be biochemical. It has a chemical sort of response. It could be a lack of lack of neurological balance. Try saying that 5 times fast. It could be something that is a chemical disorder. It could be a whole load of other things. But on a nutshell, depression talks about the past. Anxiety talks about the future. And with a discontent with either, respectively. So, Christina, spot on. Another thought keeps popping up in my head that when I walk down the road and become a father, I certainly want to be very well cognizant of these things, because if things follow from one to one to one, I have to be on top of that. When I know for a fact that it spreads across. And that's not to say that there wasn't any reason why it existed in the first place. It's a coping mechanism. People cope in the way they cope, right? We talked in the past about firefighting. Good firefighters versus bad firefighters. A good firefighter would be me going to the gym at 5 a.m. A bad firefighter would be me at a casino at 5 a.m. playing massive amounts of money per hand. At some point, we have to try to collect these thoughts, collect these things that are burning, and not having all the boxes open at once. Addressing things one at a time, and not everything at one time. When we're anxious, and we have this sort of very bad relationship with our anxiety, we could couple really darn fast, can't we? Same is true with depression. When we think about the history, when we think about our past, and we think about the things that wasn't right, and we think about the things that basically held us, and we don't have a good relationship with that. We don't know to learn a lesson, not dwell, move forward. It becomes a mess. It becomes a hot mess. LT, good evening. How are you? I hope you're doing well over there. For sure. So we are basically cognizant of these things. We are recognizing all these things that happen. We recognize all these events. We recognize the last 10 months of your dad's life. And it's a sort of situation where here I am about to be engaged back in '03. And he passes away on a July night in 2003. And it really put a giant test on that of my ex-wife. We weren't even husband and wife at the time. We weren't even engaged, so to speak, at the time. But it made me realize who's out there to be our support net. My cousin, my best friend from college, Josh, my mom, my ex, all those people. The realization, I keep on using that word, the light bulb popping up over my head is the fact that people come and go in our lives, but we must never fault them or slight them for the roles they played in our lives. It's something that I am reminded of with many relationships in this life, including that of my ex. That, for a time, we had that strong connection and we learned things off of each other and we grew. And at some point, it ended. Same is true with my dad. So you want to continue the coupling. My dad ended up divorcing from my mom. And they were separated for a long time, and then they were divorced because, New York is funny that way. But they remained friends. They remained friends till his death in '03. There were a lot of conversations back and forth. My mom talked to my dad on his last day of life, as I did too. We had conversations with him. My cousin, my uncle, I had to go get him to the hospital, which was a very tricky situation because they're down in Queens. I'm up in Connecticut. We're going through all that. But we must never lose sight of the people that are in our lives. And things happen for one reason or another, and we must observe. We must never dwell. We must take in the lessons deep and move forward. My dad, he had a problem with gambling, had a problem with his weight, had a problem with other things, had heart attacks, and I knock on wood that I haven't. I've had panic attacks that felt like them, but my cardiologist seems to think that there wasn't a problem. So we must take all of that into consideration, for sure. Petey, good evening. Hope you're doing well. He says, "What's up, my brother? Hope you're doing better." I am. Good day, bad day. As the MS would produce itself, I'm really fortunate for what the O crevice pronounced 11 different ways, but the infusions I took in late March, mid-April are starting to work, and I'm very thankful for that. Thank you, Petey, for sure. Christina goes on and says, "Compulsive or pathological gambling takes over a family, and the effect on the children is great. The children may thus live in a world without attention." It's I've seen situations that are like that. I must be honest with my dad. We did try to hold on to some sort of a normal cadence in talking to each other. I was very bad about that towards the end. I used to call him like once a week. And once it became every other week because I moved to Connecticut and there were a lot of things going on. And, certainly I met my ex and there was that too. Major regret there, of course. But we must make sure that we give the people that are near and dear in our lives, in our heart, in our mind, in our soul, the attention, because we love them and they love us. So we do that. So that was really, really well put, Christina. Petey reminding everybody to hashtag share squad for sure. Thank you, Petey. So I wrote a ton of notes here, which, by the way, my handwriting has become worse. Over the last 10 years, it's become very much chicken scratch. Not that I ever prided myself on my handwriting, but it's chicken scratch, for sure. His demons, gambling, drinking, diabetes. Oh, right, cigarettes. I mentioned that. The walls were yellow in his apartment. I smoked cigars for a good long while, not to the level of nicotine that my dad was getting, but I did smoke more than my share of cigars. Now, I think in light of the MS diagnosis back in January, the only thing I'm smoking these days is CBD. I'm debating whether or not to get my medical marijuana card. It's a shocker. More as an insurance policy, I think, because there are some days where I feel like neurologically I'm just off. But yeah, I know the disastrous effects that machine-generated tobacco, i.e. a cigarette, can do to someone. It killed my father. He died of a heart attack, but you certainly know that the cigarette smoking did not help one iota. My uncle, we lost to cancer. He was a cigar smoker as well. So tobacco is very much a real concern. Now, I'm not going to be the one that says all cigars, all cigarettes must go away. There's always something in the sense of moderation. But we also have to be very cognizant of what the things we do to ourselves do to our bodies, whether they are physically or mentally. Both. Petey, with a really good reminder, he says, as long as you can read it all, that matters. That matters, brother. Yeah, I could read it. So, yeah. It's amazing that I still remember that my dad's blood sugar was at 700 plus when he got admitted to the hospital with the cellulitis. It was up in his head, and the doctors were more than scared that it was going to seep to his brain. Fortunately, it didn't. But, that sort of thing and the effect of cellulitis and diabetes, very much a real thing. And it's something where if you have that sort of family history, it's something you have to really keep an eye on. I've become more apparently clear, more apparently resonant to that because of the fact that I now have been diagnosed with MS, but I've had demyelinating disorder since 2011, that first event, and it certainly should have been something I should have put to bed back then, but it continued for too long, for sure. Sue says, I thank you for always supporting my cigarette quitting. Yes, walls closed. It's part of it. Anytime, Sue. Anytime. We truly have formed the community where we look out for each other. And Sue, I know that you're doing your darnest to take care of all these things. And if you ever need to talk, you know where to find me. That's true for all of you. You know where to find me. Should I put up the email again? Yeah, why not, right? I can be reached at theventureforward@gmail.com, but Sue, I think we're friends on Facebook and YouTube, so you know how to reach out to me too. But if you ever have any questions or you ever wanted to have my, what's my opinion about this, or you want some sort of story on how I look at weight loss and how I'm always there. Now, I say that telling you full well, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a therapist, but I've been through this. I know what's working for me. So I will share that information with that disclaimer very loud in the beginning and probably at the end of what I tell you. But yeah, I'm here. Christina says, do you know any of this, John? Someone told me that one of the dirtiest conspiracies tied to Michael Jordan's gambling plight is whether the mafia or drug organizations killed Michael Jordan's father, James, due to his son's unpaid gambling debts. I did hear that. I always look at that sort of thing as whether you can confirm nor deny sort of thing, but I have heard that, Christina. So I do know, though, that Michael Jordan had a gambling problem well before his father's passing, or untimely passing. So I know that gambling always resonated with him. He liked to gamble in the casino. He gambles on the golf course. He had that for a long time. Now, whether or not that picked up because of that, I'm not Oliver Stone or anything, but when, it's plausible. I mean, not a PI or anything, but, it's worth an investigation, or 20, I'm sure. Maybe another documentary on ESPN, I'm sure. Anyhow. My dad also had a bit of a tete-a-tete with the IRS as well. Get those hand pays and whatnot, and you always get that sort of feedback later on about how everything wasn't accounted for correctly, and you have to find win-loss statements to account for that. So it's something that affected my dad too. And you think it's something, well, John, if it happened to your dad, why did you go down that road? Because, when you're dealing with that sort of dopamine trip and that sort of way of coping, well, that's what we did. Easier said than done, of course. But anyhow. So my dad really played a giant role in my life, not only in the sense of these sort of life lessons of don't do this, but it reminded me of things like, as far as relationships, and a lot of the key points that my dad told me was in the last year of his life. It reminded me never to go to bed angry. Always try to work it out that day. No matter what happens, try to work it out. And it's something I hold on to. I try to never go to bed angry, whether it is your girlfriend or a dear business partner or whatnot. I don't want to go to bed angry. That's too much things that are harbored. If we can't resolve it right then and there, let's at least come to a resolution to at least be able to learn from it, but not dwell upon it, right? The next thing he said was very important, in the sense that you should never, when you get close to whoever in your life, you should never fight them verbally or physically. And they should never lay a hand on you, and you should never lay a hand on them. Which is something where you say, wow, that sounds like basic sort of, that should be normal. Well, you'd be surprised more times than not that comes up. And the fact of the matter is, it takes one long conversation to say, look, the next time that happens, I gotta go my way. I gotta leave. I gotta head the other way. So it's something to really remain true to, and true to yourself. And the last thing I wrote down as far as life lessons that he taught me was, be as transparent as you can be, within reason. He stressed the words within reason, in a sense that there are times that it's a little difficult to be transparent for one reason or another. But be as transparent as you can be, no matter what. It's something I forgot for a good long time. It's something that I'm holding on to, and I know is so resonant and so important and so paramount to my recovery in the many different areas where I'm seeking recovery from. Must never lose sight of that. So, Christina says, the greatest gift you can give to the people you love is your recovery. Thank you. Thank you. I try to not only try to do the best I can and remain steadfast in all this, but also be very adamant and very open about this. Because this is something that can help many people. And I know that the struggles and the journey that I've gone through is helping a lot of people, all of you, and I thank all of you. Love all of you. Petey says, during my addiction days, I functioned with my blood sugar levels over 650 levels. Since recovery, I got my A1C levels down to 6. So at A1C at 11, levels down to 6, and feeling so much better only by God's grace. Petey, that's determination. That's realizing what that sort of thing does to you and correcting it and remaining true to yourself. Transparency is very important, but the most important person you can be transparent with, PD, is yourself. Because if you're not going to be transparent with yourself, then you still have things you have to work through. It's like someone asked me a week ago, that journal, you're still putting food in the journal. It's 800 some odd days. You're still putting food in that journal. How are you not? Do you not put food? No, I put food in the journal every day. As far as my daily journal, there are days that I don't, but I catch up. I've gotten it down to a point where I can caption a picture or perhaps put down an audio journal or a video journal, but I try to make sure that I have a journal entry for every day. If I'm a day behind, I catch up. I play double duty, triple duty. Make sure it's there. Because again, it's being transparent to oneself, right? Gilly asks, sorry if I missed, at what age were you at your parents' divorce? Great question, Gilly. My parents had a brief separation when I was like 5. They got back together. But then when we fast forward to when I was 11, the night of the Tyson Spinks fight, 91 seconds. That was the night that my parents told me that that my dad's moving to Queens, and or my dad was moving to an apartment in Queens. We ended up moving to Long Island somewhere. They separated when I was 11, around 11, because it was June of so 10 technically, but I was almost 11. And they ended up finalizing the divorce as far out to 94. So I was I was 16 when that was done, 17. So my 10 years old, but with a separation early and divorced towards my later teens. They remained close in the sense that they talked to each other a lot. And I think they're I think for reasons that I still don't fully understand, but I'm very appreciative of, because it gave me an understanding of relationships can exist on many different levels, and they don't have to have a certain title. It doesn't have to have a certain name to it. The relationship that my parents had, separation and divorce, tells that story greatly. Christina reminded me that was Monday, June 27th, 1988. Yeah. It was a pay-per-view fight on a Monday. They don't usually do that anymore. If it's Friday or Saturday, they don't do Monday fights anymore. But it was a Monday night fight. Because I remember recounting the story to some friends the next morning about the 91 seconds. Did I talk about the fact that my parents are separating? No, kind of underneath. But 91 seconds, Tyson was an incredible fighter for sure. Gilly says, did you have to switch high schools or graduate the same one? No. Everything was done in the same school district. At the time of the separation, I was going to elementary school in Queens. When we moved to Long Island in March, for the period of 3 months, I was still going back to Queens to elementary school to finish out my 6th grade. And then when I got to 7th grade, I got out to Long Island and spent 7 through 12 out in Bethpage. 7th, 8th in junior high, 9th through 12th in high school. So didn't require any sort of move, any sort of change. At 10 years of age, 11 years of age, the question is, John, who do you want to be with? Who do you want to live with? And I'm very honored and thankful that they were knowledgeable to say, hey, we're going to ask you. I said, I'm going to stay with my mom. So that's what happened. And my dad ended up seeing him twice a week through middle school, through high school. When I got to college, because I didn't have a car, my dad actually took me back and forth the 2 or 3 times a semester. My dad is an incredible gentleman, incredible guy. Was he perfect? Far from it. Am I perfect? Far from it. But I love him. I absolutely, honest to God, love him. And I'm very thankful for it. I have his neck chain in a keepsafe box on my mantle in my living room. And at one point I was thinking about starting to wear it, and I figured, I'm going to put this in a keepsafe box and it's going to be on the mantle. And funny enough, a very dear friend got that box. So I put it in that box, and it's up on the mantle. A very dear friend that you might see on Friday nights. Okay, her. Thank you, Ashley, for that. Very much thanks. I guess the moral of this story is this. Life is very important. Life is very much living. Life is worth living. Life is for the living. Because if we're not doing everything to the best of our ability to enjoy this incredible journey, then what are we doing? But we must think about that from the short term and the long term. We must think about the things that we used to do, those of us in the recovery community, and realizing what we've substituted them for a little bit of a longer life, a little bit of a better step forward, a better chance, a venture forward, if you will. We must never lose sight of that. And when we feel ourselves tinkering and going one way or the other, we must never forget that there's always help. There's always help. LT, who is in this, is he still here? I don't even know, but runs an incredible channel called Recovering Addict. There is Real Recovery with Nicole. There is Sober James. There are a lot of groups out there that are there to help. They're there to listen. They're there to give you wisdom and guidance and hindsight about what you need to do in this life. And if it's a question of maybe it's time for me to take the steps, then maybe it's time for you to take the steps. But it's being honest with yourself. Always being honest with yourself. And if you can't be honest with yourself, you have to address it. In my realm, I address it through therapy. I address it through journaling. I address it through meditation. But you have to be honest with yourself. LT, I'm glad you're here. And Recovering Addict. Great channel. LT, I'm very appreciative of you. I'm very appreciative that you're here tonight. I will never say that I have a strong handle on this. I never take tomorrow for granted. But I do like what I'm doing to try to get myself to a better place health-wise, both physically and mentally. The O service, very important for the MS and the demyelination. The weight loss, very important. If I didn't lose the weight, God only knows what that MS diagnosis would be, or the demyelination event towards the end of last year would have been. So we must never lose sight of that. I'm also very fortunate of the fact that I am doing the best I can, and I'm able to tell a story, and you know, truth be told, there's a very much a cathartic need for me to do this, to remind myself of what all this is. Always being very much passionate about this journey, very much passionate about what this has been, because I also know what happens when we don't. And that in itself is the story of my dad. A couple more comments. Gelly saw a part of that hiking video. LT was nice. So Recovering Addict, great place to go for that. LT says, everything you have been saying is very moving. Thank you, John. Anytime, LT. There's a lot of things you say on your channel that is very moving, as well as Nicole, as well as James, as well as all of you. I'm very much appreciative. I'm very much grateful and thankful for all of you. Thursday, we are going to talk about sobriety. Now, my sobriety date isn't until the end of the month. But I think in light of how much alcoholism or alcohol was a crutch for my father, I think it stands to reason for me to continue to talk about it, especially this week, especially how the last 5 months have been really rough as far as, wow, I'm diagnosed with this. I don't feel normal. It would be very easy for me to fall off. I haven't. I carry that chip proud in my pocket in a satchel. And at the end of the month, there will be a 2-year chip for that too. We're going to talk about sobriety on Thursday. We're not only going to talk about the short-term sort of effects of sobriety or the need for sobriety, but we're also going to talk about sobriety and weight loss and how there is a high correlation with my weight and my alcoholism. So we're going to talk about that on Thursday. There will be a special edition of Venture at the end of the month to celebrate the 2 years. But Thursday, we're going to talk about sobriety from the perspective of, one, how alcohol was very much a bad sort of crutch for my dad, but also when I removed the alcohol, the weight started flying off of me. And that's what we're going to talk about on Thursday. And then Friday, we will have a VF Talks with Paul, with Matt, with Ashley. We're going to talk about anything and everything. And certainly, it's going to be a good time for sure, as I look forward to those talks every Friday. Sue says, thank you for sharing this. I know my dad and yours would be proud of us. Thank you, Sue. Thank you very much. And on that, I'm going to tell you the same thing I say at the end of every Venture Forward and VF Talks, which will be back Thursday night, 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific for sobriety. But until then, stay safe, stay sane, stay strong, stay sober. You're worth it. Have a great night. And Dad, wherever you are up there, I love you. Good night.